has used tricks and legal fictions to change that playing field. The Commerce Clause of the Constitution has been abused by our Supreme Court. Abused to the point at which its meaning is meaningless. It has been used to justify the intrusion of government in individual businesses based on the Commerce Clause. It has used the Constitution not as a shield to protect our liberties, but as a sword to cut through your rights on a daily basis. And the Supreme Court continues to do this. Why? Because our Supreme Court is not concerned with the law anymore. Have you heard the latest from the next judicial nominee for the Supreme Court? I would hope I would reach a better conclusion as a woman, Latina, than a male white would with the same set of facts in front of me because of my experience. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, the Constitution doesn't want your experience in the law. It wants you to read the law as it was written. Our Constitution is not a breathing, living document. It is a square parchment with four corners and well-defined parameters. It sets down what must be the law, not what you'd like it to be.
That's right, yes!
Yeah. Our founding fathers realized this might be a problem. So guess what? The good gentleman from New York at the Constitutional Convention said, our people will support your Constitution if you draft a Bill of Rights. And so 10 amendments to the Constitution were drafted. And they were voted on and accepted by everyone. And what did they do? Those 10 amendments to the Constitution were designed to prevent exactly what has happened now from happening. What happened? The most important part of the Bill of Rights has been left off of every single copy of the Constitution that is out there. If you go home, you Google the Constitution, you Google the Bill of Rights, I am going to tell you, you will not find the preamble to the Bill of Rights anywhere to be found. Do you know why? Because they don't want you to read it. And the reason they don't want you to read it is because it tells you precisely why the Bill of Rights exists. In the Declaration of Independence and the preamble of the Constitution. Why is the preamble of the Bill of Rights not included? Because if the preamble were included, the emphasis would again return to the people, as it is in the 10th Amendment, where it says all powers not specifically delegated in this Constitution are reserved unto the states and the people, respectively. Please show me in the Constitution where it says we can have a Federal Reserve Bank. It's not in there. It's not a power enumerated to the Constitution to our Congress to establish or our President to appoint. But what has our courts done? They have used the Commerce Clause to say it is necessary to promote the general welfare of the United States. You tell me, is the influx of money without any basis behind it in your general welfare's interest?
No. No.
Is the fact that the United States continues to spend money it doesn't have, inuring to the benefit of the general welfare? Absolutely not. But the Constitution says you can't do it. What have our Supreme Courts done? Nothing about it. Most recently, how many of you heard of the Kellogg decision in Connecticut? Eminent domain. Our Constitution says you may not be deprived of property under the Takings Clause without due process of law. Eminent domain must only be used for a public purpose. Explain to me how a private corporation setting up a strip mall is a public purpose.
No.
It's not. But our Supreme Court, by 5-4, told you citizens the government can take your property and give it to a business.
No.
That's not the Constitution. Many of the flaws of our modern Supreme Court lay at the feet of one president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He threatened to pack the court in order to get his legislative agenda to pass constitutional muster. And when he did that, the Supreme Court folded. At that point, our republic ceased to worry about the constitutionality of legislation and worried about their own jobs more. That cannot be the case. If our Constitution means what it says, if the blood spilt by our patriots in 1776 and 1812 has any meaning, the blood that document is written in must be upheld. I'd like to read a quote from Justice Antonin Scalia, who is one of the two originalists on the Supreme Court now. He's been asked on several occasions to speak about what the founders intended. And so I'd like to just read his quote to you and leave you with his thoughts. The role of the judge in our constitutional republic is profoundly important and oftentimes complex. Activism is no proper posture for a judge, but then again, neither is restraint. Judges must apply the Constitution to cases before them, neither making it up nor ignoring it. They must especially appreciate that the Constitution is a document of delegated, enumerated, and limited powers. That the judge will start on the question of what rights are protected by this document must be its focus. For where there is no power, there is again a right, belonging either to the states or to the people. Indeed, we should hardly imagine that, before the addition of the Bill of Rights, the Constitution failed to protect the most simple rights because it was not in the document. But reviving the doctrine of enumerated powers is only part of the task before us, if constitutional government is to be restored. The worst thing about a living Constitution is it will ultimately destroy our Constitution. The American people have to figure out what is going on. If we select lawyers, if we select people who can read the text and give it fair meaning, and the same meaning it had the day it was adopted, then you are a good lawyer. If, on the other hand, we are to pick people to draw out of their own conscience and experience a new Constitution with all sorts of new values to govern our society, then we should not look principally for good lawyers. We should look for people who agree with us, and that they will create rights out of whole cloth. Then we would want to pick people that should write a new Constitution, and we should ignore the old one. And that is why you hear in the discourse on this subject people talking about moderate judges. What is a moderate judge? What is the moderate interpretation of a text? Is it halfway between what it really says and what you'd like it to mean? There is no such thing as a moderate interpretation of text. Would you ask a lawyer, can you draw me a moderate contract? The only way the word has meaning is that if you are looking for someone to write a law, to write a constitution, then don't have someone interpret it. The moderate judge is one who will devise a new constitution so that most people will approve of it. This precisely is the problem. A moderate decision, because it's a decision most people would want, abridges the freedom of everyone. The Constitution is useless if we make it subject to the whims of each generation. It is an enduring document that speaks to rights which are inalienable and therefore unchanged by the hand of time. Our Constitution, to be protected, requires each of us to say to our elected representatives, do not support a judicial nominee who will not read the text of that document appropriately and accurately and enforce it without passion or prejudice. Lady Liberty is blindfolded for a reason, because she doesn't care about your experiences in life. She doesn't care about her experiences in life. She cares about the law. What does the law say and how should it be applied?
That's right.
I urge each of you to remind your children, your grandchildren, your friends and your neighbors that when you hear things like it's great that someone who is of Hispanic origin and a female has been appointed to the Supreme Court, that you temper that with asking the million-dollar question. Will she apply the Constitution as it's written? And I think the answer is fairly clear in everything she's said. You have to be aware of this because this Supreme Court nominee and any that follow it will be responsible for interpreting your liberty. Our liberty has eroded enough. It's time for us to say the Supreme Court has failed us. Our leaders have failed us. It's time to return to the Constitution. God bless America.
Yeah.